Ask Reddit. Happily married couples of Reddit. What was the moment you realized this was the SO you were going to marry? She just knew when I needed a hug without asking. I hope to experience that one day. I was really sick, going on day number 4 of high fevers and a bunch of other fun. She was taking care of me the entire time, running to the store to get whatever was needed and taking care of our dogs so I could rest. I woke up just craving a sandwich and asked if she could make me one. Without hesitation she made us both sandwiches and brought and came upstairs to the bedroom, put on a movie, and laid next to me while we ate a sandwich. Then she fell asleep on me. We had already been together a few years, but this was the moment I knew I'd be a damn fool if I didn't marry her. A few months later I took her to the ocean for the first time. We were living in Wisconsin where she lived all her life, and proposed. That was 3 years ago, and we finally got married this past May at Mount Rainier in Washington. She's actually sick now, laying next to me in bed. It's 3:26 AM, and I'm going to run to the store shortly to get more soup and medicine. We've had a lot of great memories, but these moments matter most. I've told this story before, but a few months into dating, we were playing categories with friends. The letter was F. The prompt was reason for being late. We both answered fart was poop. We just celebrated 6 years together and almost 3 years of marriage. The fart/poop jokes have only gotten better. I've posted this before, but we were about 3 months into dating, and I hadn't really told her what my parents did for work. Her parents own a successful business. I immigrated here, and my dad was a cashier at a convenience store. When she asked me, I hesitated to answer, and she immediately picked up on it and said, "You should never be ashamed of your parents. They've worked so hard to get you where you are. I'm so proud of them." And honestly, I cried. I realized right then that I was going to marry this girl. No regrets at all. She makes me a better person every day. We started dating my senior year of college after a brief friendship at the beginning of the school year. He was my first boyfriend and I'd never even had a close friendship with a boy before. But we had such similar interests, and the more time we spent together in those first few weeks, the more in sync we clearly were. We'd say the same things at the same time all the time. Or one would make a random comment, and it would literally be word for word what the other was thinking. Part of the getting to know each other phase was sharing movies we loved that the other hadn't seen. He once mentioned wanting to show me Wallace and Gromit: A Close Shave. Sheep were our mutual favorite animal for some reason, but we didn't get around to actually watching it and it sort of slipped out of mind. Then one night a few weeks in, he was planning to come by to hang out. Before he arrived, as if tempting fate, I said to myself, if he brings the Wallace and Gromit DVD with him tonight, I'm going to marry him. He did bring it, and I married him. He spent time to really get to know me. He listened to me. We wanted the same things. My parents liked him, and his liked me. Then I got pregnant, lol, 25 years and counting. You've been pregnant for 25 years. Should be due any day now. I was in love with my best friend for a long time, and could tell he had feelings for me too. We had been on one outing that could have been considered a date, and we spent long hours with just each other, talking in his car, but I was afraid to admit that the nature of our relationship was a romantic one by explicitly confessing feelings. Finally, I realized that some things are worth taking a risk for, and I asked him out with the oh so smooth phrase, "Hey, UHH, would you UHH, maybe like to go to a museum sometime, like, as a date?" We held hands in the museum, went on a hike to a tower, and spent the end of the day wrapped in each other's arms watching the Fellowship of the Ring. While we were cuddled up, we both had a moment where we saw our reflection in his skylight and thought, yeah, this is the person I'm going to marry. I'm typing this with him cuddled up next to me. We had been dating for 3 months and I went to pick her up for a date. When I walked in, she and her mother were sitting at the kitchen table. We left. I asked her what she and her mother were doing. Planning our wedding. I said okay. Edit. October we'll be married for 37 years. My response would be, you're marrying your mom? This easily could have been the answer to why did you and your partner break up. That sounds like what Han Solo would say to Leia. Very cute. He had been working all day and was on his way home for some much deserved sleep. But then I drunkenly texted him asking him to pick me up McDonald's. He not only turned around and bought my food, but he texted, and asked if the friends I was with wanted anything while he was there. Unsurprisingly, they all did want something. Because you cannot ask a drunk basic girl if she wants fries and not expect her to say anything other than of course she wants fries. He then drove it to the bar we were at and made sure they all had Ubers or DDs before taking me home. I told him I loved him on the way home and never looked back. When I had Bell's palsy on half my face while she taped my eye closed so I could sleep, it hit me. I'm going to marry this girl one day. Then one day, before I was going to pop the question, we were in church and I prayed for a definite sign that I was making the right decision. Something that I would recognize immediately when we came out of the church. It had begun to freaking snow in Texas, which is completely unheard of. Okay God, no need to go 10 plagues of Egypt for me to get the message. Chill bro. I puked all over my girlfriend while I was asleep after a party. She was still there the next day. We're married for 3 years now and expecting our second child in a month. Freaking lit. I poop you not. We were 14 or 15 years old, and after a couple discussions with the dude about nothing in particular, I told my best friend I was going to marry him one day totally sincerely. She nodded her approval and agreed, and then we proceeded with the rest of the day, as if this was a totally normal thing to just announce out of the blue. She started jokingly calling me Mrs. Dude's last name too. He and I started dating shortly after that, and got married in our mid-20s. He never knew about it. We're 32 now, and I mentioned this to my husband. He was totally freaked out, and alluded to that episode of South Park, where the girls have their own club/secret society due to their gender, and frequently asks if whatever they agree upon sparkles with everyone else. OMFG yes. The girls' secret society in the park bathroom is exactly like this. Sunshine, sparkle, Beep has the floor. When he flipped the pancake perfectly, we were in my little kitchen, and he was super confident that he could make the flip. I was standing there like a panicky little bad going no, it'll drop. But he just went hop, and the pancake flipped over in the frying pan. Right then and there, I knew he was going to be a super fun dad to our future children. I love how simple this is. Our first date went so wrong to what he had planned. I could tell he was trying so hard, and everything went bad. He put his arm around me during the movie 5 minutes before it ended. The place he tried to take me to for dinner closed the kitchen. Before we got there, we went to Burger King instead, and I had to pay because they wouldn't take his $100 bill. He was the first guy to buy me flowers, and he had brought them at the start of that date, but I didn't have a vase. So after Burger King, we went to Walmart to buy a vase, and as we are standing on the vase aisle he says, "Pick any case you want, I don't care the cost." I grabbed one that was only about $20, and when we got to pay, he had left the 100 in the car. So I paid for the vase too. It was just comical by that point. We have been married over 10 years now, and have 3 beautiful children. I love reading. I love literature. I love grammar. I love words. Yes, I'm weird like that. On our first date he used the words mushroomed as in, the housing development had just mushroomed around the area, and remiss as in, would it be remiss of me to ask you to lunch? That was me, hook, line and sinker. One date and I told my mum I had met the man I was going to marry. Okay, he was also hot, had great manners, beautiful eyes and the world's finest ass, but it was that damn mastery of the English language that got me over the line. It will be 25 years in January. But did he ever use the word antidisestablishmentarianism? I think grammatically it shouldn't have the Y. Antidisestablishmentarianism. Yup. In just anti a very good spieler. She accepts me for every screw up and self-hating moment I have in life. The first weekend we hung out in person, she drove from Omaha Street, Louis, and spent the weekend watching football and catfish with me. Glad to hear you didn't get catfished yourself. We were just laying in bed cuddling, and he said I love you, and then he said, and because I love you, I love your daughter too. And that was it. He bought me the 5th Harry Potter book the day it was released. He stood in line over an hour and he wasn't even a fan. He also wrote a note in it. He'd been planning it a long time, because about a week before he gave me a sweet note on a bookmark. I treasure my HP collection, but book 5 is the best. We've been married 15.5 years and I love him more every day. I was 16 when we met, and was underweight. because of this, I ended up with a blood sugar issue. One day I was alternating between surfing online and texting him. Since my phone was on charge, I had to keep getting up to text cause my charger was on the other side of the room. The days before iPhones and charging from the computer. As I was texting him, I had a sugar crash and passed out, hitting my head on the way down. Came to find he hadn't again, asking why I wasn't replying. He knew of the sugar issue. I told him I had passed out but was fine. Didn't mention the head bang. He didn't know I was home alone. I wasn't good at asking for help, and I always felt like an inconvenience to people, so I didn't tell him I wished he was there cause I was always hazy after a drop. He was the only one I felt comfortable with in those moments. He lived 20 odd minute run away though, and couldn't get a lift. 10 minutes later he is at my door, out of breath. He had wanted to make sure I was okay, especially since he knew how I got. We were engaged about 5 months later. Married when I was 23. Had been cheated on at the end of a 5-year relationship. Mid-30s and went back home to live for a year back at my parents' place, wallowing in self-pity and feeling like an utter failure. 8 months in, tried a bit of online dating. This was just before Tinder took off, and our city is small in a house so it probably wouldn't have been any good regardless, but online dating was just an utter scam where guys pay for tokens and burn them to try to start talking to girls who either are just scammers or don't even have the common decency to reply and say no thanks, I'm not interested but thanks. A guy I knew said that I had to call this chick up and chat to her because she was a pretty awesome girl and we'd get along great. I was hesitant after being cheated on the online dating scams, but I summoned my courage and called her up. We talked a bit on the phone a few times and I tried to Facebook stalk her for info on who she was and what she was like, but even though I'm a computer tech and pretty good at finding info, I couldn't actually find her or anything about her. I called a different friend who I knew for years, and it turned out she knew her, and she said, oh yeah, you should totally call her, she's awesome. I texted her, and we texted a few times. Then I called her and spoke on the phone a few times. Then we decided to physically meet each other. Didn't want to freak her out so suggested meeting at a local pub for a drink on a Friday night, where there was heaps of people around, and she could bail if she didn't like me, and so it was safe. You know, meeting random people you don't know and all that. In a house, met up, got along great. Had a great chat, then took a walk along the foreshore area where we laid around and looked at the stars. I was cold and used her as a wind block, all in joking good jest. At the end of it all said our goodbyes and said we should meet up again. Then she offered me a lift home, which I wasn't expecting. So she dropped me off, and then I thought to myself, this girl's a keeper. Married to her for 6 years and had 2 girls, one who is 5 and one who will be 3 in November. When I had my first mental breakdown in front of her. I have something called dissociative identity disorder, not multiple personality disorder, where I like to regress into different personalities that are easier for me to act with. Majority of the times it's video game or TV characters that have a defined personality and act a certain way for easily explained reasons. Really hard to explain why I do this. I broke down and told her everything. Why I put on what many people call masks. All my previous exes would call me crazy, would taunt me, this, that and the other. Huh? She just knelt down and hugged me and said, whoever you are feeling, I'll love them just as much as I love you. Yep. Heart equals stolen. Been with her for 13 years. We went to Buffalo Wild Wings and she took a fry from my plate without permission after saying she didn't want fries. I didn't have an urge to detach her face from her body. That is how I knew. She still does it, but I always order extra fries. We met while my wife was studying in the US for a semester. She's from overseas. We dated while she was here studying, then spent a week at Disney World, and then faced the aspect of dating from 8,000 miles apart. I remember crying when she flew home. It was about 6 months later that I could fly over to visit her. I realized after that trip, when we were at the airport, and she was bawling, that she was the one. We dated for 4 long years, flying back and forth once, maybe twice a year, before we finally got married. It's funny because I tell people not to get involved in a long distance relationship, because it really sucks, but Otto, it was worth it. when I said something's very freaked up, and I could see the horror in his face, but he still genuinely smiled and laughed. Also when we agreed that we are naming our kids Dick, Chenny and Poophead. Got home after a date at a large garden. I was looking through photos I took, and she snuck her way into one. She was making this goofy face mocking a statue of a sprite that was next to a tree. I laughed so hard and knew then and there we had been dating for only about a half year and decided to take my $800 car on a road trip around much of the United States. She's from a different country and I wanted to show her the place. We set off, camping in national parks each night and hauling a cooler and box with enough supplies to make all of our meals. We were students with almost no money. That trip, some highs and some lows. Got caught in the remains of a hurricane and a flash flood tore up our campsite while we were in the tent. Car broke down in the middle of very hot nowhere Texas. This is before cell phones were common, so we were in a bit of a spot for a while. By the end of that trip, what had been a promising relationship with a sexy woman had cemented into something much more, and that was when I knew I wanted to be with her forever. This autumn will mark 25 years since we married, 27 since that trip, have 2 great kids in college, and while age is clearly starting to claim its territory, stay in hotels now. When we travel, my back can't handle the night on the ground. We are still very much in love, recently bought a new home, and the realtor thought we were new what's lol. I was working at a church all day, and it was time to leave, and they left me the keys to lock up. It was like 11 PM, and I can't find the keys. She's able to retrace my steps and figures out that they're in some random toolbox that I got a screwdriver out of literally 7 AM that morning, which felt like an entire day earlier. At that moment, I was like, yep, I need her. She jumped into the doorway and ripped a fart whilst I was lying in bed on my phone, so yeah, she was the one for me. Thank you for watching / listening Gao. If you like what you see, please like and subscribe to this channel.